Hey everybody, what's up from Pokemon Classics? Reminding you all that the classics never go out of style. You know, recently YouTube has been absolutely exploding with commentary about the most recent scandal to affect the Pokemon market, and that scandal comes in the form of a new technology, CT pack scanning technology that allows users to see inside of packs and other sealed products. Now, to be perfectly clear, this is something that I see as an overall negative for the hobby. I am not a fan of this whatsoever. But having said that, I think in recent weeks, the coverage has been overly pessimistic, presenting this as an entire doomsday scenario that will destroy all of the Pokemon trading card game market. And I don't think that's the case. So what I wanted to do in this video is weigh in with what I think are the likely implications in both the short term and the long term. Looking at the short term, I think there's a number of vulnerabilities that'll be exploited, making packs and other sealed products more susceptible to scamming than they have been in the past. Secondly, though, I think the long-term implications are that we will see the market adapt to this in meaningful ways, creating new sub-markets for sealed products. Finally, in this video, I wanted to address some of my personal considerations, weighing some of the pros and potential cons that come along with this new technology. Anyway, guys, these are just my thoughts and opinions, and I invite yours down in the comments as well. I know this topic has been well looked at in the last few weeks, but I think this is the likely outcome that we will see. Anyway, guys, let's roll into it. Before we begin, we should address what exactly is pack scanning. Recently, a YouTube video went viral for taking an old CT scanner, repairing it, and then using it to scan sealed Pokemon packs, revealing the holographic cards inside. Now, essentially, this technology uses 3D imaging to identify holographic foil or other forms of texture on individual cards that are sealed in sealed product. Presumably, this could be used on packs, as it was in the video, but also applies to booster boxes or even cases. Either way, the implication is that sealed products will no longer need to be opened to reveal the contents, but instead can undergo a 3D imaging scan, creating all sorts of potential problems. It's hard to say how prevalent this technology and this process have been in the past, but currently, it's going mainstream, with a number of new companies emerging to capitalize on this new technology. In fact, at least one company has already built out a website and a business model in which they charge between $75 and $65 per pack, depending on how many packs are submitted. They've also included software demos that you can download that demonstrate the process for how they scan packs, as well as revealing the individual cards inside. Finally, we've already seen some of the first users posting their results from using this service, and the results seem to be conclusive, with clearly identifiable holographic cards from inside the packs. They've also announced that booster box services are coming soon. So clearly CT pack scanning is going to disrupt the market, but will it destroy it? That's where I'd say, hold on a second. Looking at the short-term effects, I think it's obvious to conclude that this will have little to no effect on Modern, because Modern packs just don't hold enough value to justify spending $65 to $75 to scan each and every one of them. Moreover, I think this is going to have a very limited effect on sealed vintage. There are some sealed vintage packs that house extremely valuable cards, and those ones are the ones most likely to be affected. You could take something like first edition base set, or even some of those larger chase cards that are disproportionately expensive to their respective sets, like Shining Gyarados or Lugia, or some of the Gold Star cards. But when it comes to vintage, I think this is only going to affect the highest value packs that have the highest value holos. We're talking ones that not only have a massive PSA 10 premium to them, but ones that would also be profitable if pulling a PSA 9, since that's what's most likely. So I think one of the things people are failing to look at when analyzing the impact of CT scanning is how prevalent, how pervasive is this going to be? And I think a lot of that depends on the financial incentive to do so. For example, let's take a vintage box like first edition Fossil set, which currently sells for about $12,000 per sealed box. Now in vintage boxes, there are 12 heavy packs, each containing a holo, and if one were to take all 12 of those packs out, send them off for scanning at $65 a piece, that's adding a significant cost to the cost basis of the box. Now, there are a few hit cards to be looking for, like Dragonite, Gengar, Articuno, and Lapras in Fossil set, but the problem here is that every one of those cards is dependent on a PSA 10 in order to earn a premium and justify the cost of opening those packs. Moreover, the gem rates for each of those holos are incredibly low, so someone would be taking a massive risk to take out the holo packs that don't have hits, keeping the ones that did, opening those, and expecting to turn a profit by grading them. It's just not very viable. And if the same cost-benefit analysis were applied to a variety of other vintage sets, I think the results would be similar, with only a few sets actually being advantageous to apply that approach. But this is where the short-term problems come into play. There's going to be a whole host of new opportunities for dishonest sellers to scam unsuspecting customers, and the foremost of these, I think, is going to come in the form of undisclosed information, where a seller has previously scanned their packs, determined that they don't have any chase hollows in them, and then resold them as heavy, hollow packs without letting the buyer know that really they're just junk. I think we're also likely to see the opposite, in which a seller claims that a pack has a specific hollow hit inside of it, and perhaps even includes scans, pictures to prove it, but in reality it's an entirely different pack. There'd be no way for the buyer to know the difference. Finally, I think there's concern over pack switching, particularly among streamers and box breakers who could have had individual packs scanned before pulling them into their inventory and selling them to unsuspecting viewers during live streams. Even for sellers who aren't dishonest and who have taken years to build up a positive reputation in the community, I think this makes selling a lot more difficult and a lot more dangerous. Those who sell sealed product, regardless of value, will likely face greater levels of skepticism and scrutiny from buyers, and in some cases, I think buyers will take advantage of this. We're likely to see an increase in false item not as described claims, as buyers have opened a pack, not received the card that they were hoping for, and either rightfully or wrongfully assumed that the pack had been scanned. We'll probably see return fraud as well, with people buying packs that have disclosed what hollow is inside, but then returned a different pack instead. And knowing eBay policies, they'll likely be protected if they return an item. Just in general, I think we're going to see people be a lot more skeptical of sellers, and this is where reputation is going to make much more of a difference now and moving forward than it ever has before. In short, it's going to take time for the average customer and collector of Pokemon cards to learn of this new technology and the implications it has on buying and selling. And in the meantime, I think there's going to be a number of vulnerabilities within the market that are exploited by bad actors on both the buying and the selling end of things. However, I do think the market will adapt over time, and that leads us to the long-term effects. Now, the first long-term effect is one that I think is obvious, but it has to do with the increasing prevalence of pack raiding over time. In any industry where there's money to be made, there's going to be optimization, and I think we'll see that happen in two ways. First, I think we'll see a number of new companies enter this market, creating more competition and lowering the cost for the end consumer. Second, I think that given enough time, these processes will be streamlined, creating more accessibility to more users. Now, I don't know anything about the overhead costs of these CT scanners or their maintenance costs, but what I have to suspect is that over time, the cost will drop further and further, making more and more products viable for scanning. The second long-term effect is a bit more nuanced, but I think we'll see a striation of the sealed pack market into a series of new branches. For example, vintage packs will no longer have a homogeneous price for a heavy pack, but instead be priced based on the individual hollow in, with scans provided. Every one of these scanned hollow packs will have their own unique price range based on that hollow, and that'll be determined by the markets that emerge. There'll be new sub-markets for this. And then any packs that are sold without disclosure of which hollow is inside will be assumed to be a dud pack, where either they don't have a chase card or they're not heavy packs at all, they're weighed packs. Imagine, if you would, an eBay listing for a first edition sealed base set pack, but it included in the description exactly what card was inside and a scan of the hollow. In this case, it's a Nidoking pack, and this one isn't going to sell for as much as if the scan had a Blastoise or a Venusaur or even a Charizard inside, since this is not one of the more valuable hollows in the first edition base set. Now, I don't know how much the market would value a sealed first edition Nidoking pack for, but I'd have to assume it'd be somewhere between the PSA 9 and PSA 10 price range, since pulling a PSA 10 condition card is highly unlikely from one of these packs. But on the other hand, people like paying for the experience as well as for the gamble of potentially getting that PSA 10 hit. So for the sake of argument, let's say the sealed pack sells for $3,200. So we could buy that pack, or we could buy pack number 2. This pack has a Venusaur artwork, and let's say it has a holographic scan of a Hitmonchan inside, which is a card with a lower population, is more difficult to grade, and is worth a bit more money. Naturally, that pack is going to cost more on the open market. In fact, looking at the price chart, there are currently 58 PSA 10 copies of first edition Hitmonchan, and the current price has been about $10,000, which is considerably more than the $6,000 that Nidoking was selling for. So naturally, it's logical to assume that a pack that had a Hitmonchan inside would sell for more than a pack that only had a Nidoking. Of course, we got to give you a third option, so let's take a look at what's behind door number 3. Let's say we come across a third eBay listing, and this one has a Blastoise pack artwork as well as a Charizard scan. This one is going to sell for considerably more with that guarantee hit of a Charizard. Now, again, these numbers are hypothetical. I don't know how much the market would actually value a sealed first edition Charizard booster pack, but if you knew that that was the card inside, and you knew how valuable this card was selling for at least $200,000, you'd have to assume that this card would have a commanding premium over any of the other base set holos, so each one of these holos would have its own market. Moreover, I would speculate that the cost of this Charizard pack might actually exceed the PSA 10 price, because opening a vintage first edition base set Charizard is such an iconic moment that there's a number of people that might be willing to pay a premium just for having the experience of doing it, rather than the actual value of the card itself. So to reiterate from earlier, I think sealed vintage packs will no longer include homogeneous prices for a weighed pack versus an unweighed pack, but instead have a series of different price ranges based on the individual holo that's inside of the sealed pack. There are different values here. There's different tiers that we could assign because some cards are better pulls than others, and every one of those would have its own dynamic price range independent of all of the rest. And any heavy pack that hasn't disclosed exactly which holo is inside or claims to be unscanned will simply be assumed to have one of those lower quality hits in it rather than one of those larger chase cards. Now, this is where I'll really do some speculating, but I think it's inevitable that whatever CT scanning process emerges, that there also has to be an encapsulation process along with it. Now, there's already been some discussion amongst these companies about how to ensure the authenticity and using tamper-proof labels and other team bags, stuff like that, but I think it's going to have to be one of those higher-end tamper-proof cases that grading companies currently use. Now, I don't know if these individual companies will produce them themselves, or if the technology will be bought out by a grading company like CGC, PSA, or one of the smaller ones out there, but it only makes sense that if the pack is going to be scanned, and those scans archived online, that it should be encapsulated, so as a buyer and a seller, you can have some assurance of knowing that that's exactly what you're receiving, rather than a pack that's been swapped out and a fraudulent scan provided. I suspect that this will be too much liability for one of the well-established grading companies to take on, but this is the only way forward that I can see for these scanning companies to ensure that the process is transparent, fair, and safe for all those parties involved. I know a number of others have speculated about this as well, but I also think it's very likely that these scanning services will emerge at conventions and trade shows, because there's a number of people that are just too distrustful of sending their sealed products in through the mail and receiving the same ones back. So I think this has a lot more viability as an in-person service. But again, I think there'd have to be an objective third-party signifier, like an encapsulation process, that proves that that pack or that product actually includes the cards that it says it does. So, pack scanning. What's the final verdict? Well, in order to make this determination, I think we have to take a careful look at both the pros and the cons of this new technology. And I think we'll start out by taking a look at the negatives. First, pack scanning opens up a whole new avenue for non-disclosure scams. And although there's already a number of scams that exist in the sealed product market, this just adds fuel to the fire for both buyers and sellers who have to navigate this space. Second, I think this disrupts the mystery of sealed product and the whole pack opening experience. Now, one could make the argument that very few people have the opportunity to open these expensive sealed vintage packs anymore, but I think this really ties into the third point on how this could limit accessibility for grail pulls moving into the future. In the past, everyone had the opportunity to purchase an expensive heavy pack with the opportunity to pull one of those really rare once-in-a-lifetime grail cards, the Charizard, the Venusaur, the Blastoise. But with pack scanning, many of those cards will be removed from circulation and repriced at such an extent that nobody can reasonably afford them. So essentially, this is now limiting the accessibility to ever being able to pull those grails to only the ultra wealthy, and I think that's unfortunate. For the sake of fairness, I also wanted to address the positives, and one useful application of this technology could be used to authenticate products by confirming the contents that are inside. Now, this is especially true of boxes or sealed products that perhaps lack provenance, and so a confirmatory scan to at least prove that it's the right trading card game inside would be helpful.
G.I. Joe!
These last two considerations I marked as positives, but in reality, they're probably more neutral, if anything. But one could be for those that are chasing a specific pull. They want a specific card, and they could buy one singular pack rather than a number of packs chasing that individual pull. Now, personally, I think that's part of the fun of opening packs is you don't know what you're going to get. But if there is somebody out there that's collecting a specific card, a specific set, or just wants the experience of pulling a specific chase card, it might be better to have that opportunity to purchase quality rather than quantity. Finally, pack scanning might flush out singles that are generally scarce, including those with really low graded populations, making them more available to collectors. I think it's fair to say that knowing which packs have good pulls in them would incentivize people to open those packs, thus increasing the availability of those singles on the market. Like Caesar crossing the Rubicon and marching his army against his home state of Rome, I see pack scanning as a crossing of the line for the Pokemon community. To me, this is not a good thing. I think it's going to hurt a lot of people, and personally, on a moral and ethical conviction, I think this goes against the spirit of trading cards entirely, where the fun, the joy is about the mystery of the cards and the packs that are being opened. And when we try to make it too financially oriented, I think that's when we lose out on a lot of what makes this hobby so wholesome. Having said that, I don't think it's Armageddon. The market will adapt, it always does, and there will still be ways to enjoy this hobby and the experience of collecting. Because that's the thing though, change is inevitable. There will always be changes in life, and although this change feels like opening the lid of Pandora's box and being bombarded with every negative thing imaginable, there's a little bit of hope. At least that's how I choose to live my life. I like to remain hopeful and optimistic about the future, and I think there'll always be something positive we can come back to in Pokemon, regardless of the other circumstances. Anyway, guys, I welcome your thoughts and comments down in the comments below. Let me know where I went wrong, or if there's any aspects to this that I didn't think of yet, and I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Anyway, guys, I'm Pokemon Classics, reminding you all that the classics never go out of style. We'll catch y'all with the next video. Till then, everybody, stay well, have fun, and as always, don't forget to enjoy collecting, even with pack scanning. That's what this is all about. We'll see y'all with the next video. Bye, everybody.